Sorry, I was just drowning in the immense amount of stuff I got this month. Welcome to June in Review. So June was an absolutely packed month. Had some stuff that I had still bought on eBay that came in. Went to TooManyGames. TooManyGames was a fantastic convention where I bought a lot of stuff, both games and not games. So there's a lot for us to talk about. I got some notes here, and we'll go through everything together. So we're going to start with some things that I bought that weren't games. I bought them from a little all over the place. Some stuff was from eBay, some stuff was from TooManyGames. But the first thing we're going to talk about is from neither. So some friends and I were talking about candy in other countries. So we were talking a little bit about Swedish candy, because that's my background. And so I went and bought some Swedish candy. So just some different candy that I bought that I strongly recommend you check out if you ever have a chance is Bilar. Bilar is Swedish for cars. They're kind of like hard marshmallows. They're just really good, and I grew up eating them because we always got them from IKEA. So we got the original ones. We got the sour ones. We also got Dime, which is hard for me to describe because I don't really know how to describe it. It's chocolate with a lot of different stuff going on. Really, really good. There is Keks, which is kind of like Kit Kats. They're wafers. Still really, really good. And the crux to what we were talking about was that chocolate in other countries is not like chocolate here in North America, which is very true. So my favorite chocolate of all time is Marabou. So Marabou is just the chocolate that comes from Sweden. And this bottom one is milk chocolate. This top one is Dime. This is definitely the best chocolate I've ever had in my life. So definitely, if you want to get Swedish candy. Speaking of, I'm going to put the link to the place that I bought the Swedish candy from. All the links to all the different artists and all the different things that I bought over the course of this month are going to be in the description. So if you see something that intrigues you, the link will probably be in the description. If it's not, let me know. But that wasn't the only candy I got. So if you know what I do as a job, somebody from my work at the end of when I was working gave me a bunch of Brazilian candy. So a couple different things is Bis, which I'm guessing is just like wafers. This bottom one looks like dark chocolate, the middle one looks like white chocolate, and the top looks like just plain milk chocolate. So those all look really good. I haven't had a chance to try them yet, but they look very tasty. Some other candies that I got were Choquito, which I'm not sure what that is, but it looks really good. And the last one was Prestigio, which looks a lot like mountains. So at some point I'll get through all of these. But getting into the more gamey things that I bought. TooManyGames, like I said, fantastic convention. The badges this year looked really, really cool. I enjoyed wearing it. I think these badges look awesome. So that's that. I also got a pin as part of the package that I bought. Just kind of neat. Also part of that package was a t-shirt. So the t-shirt that came with my package says TooManyGames does what other cons don't, which is a reference to the 1990 battles of Sega and Nintendo when Sega said, Sega do what Nintendo don't. So my package came with a pin and a t-shirt. And I really like that t-shirt, so I'll wear it at some point. The other t-shirt I got over the course of this, at TooManyGames, was this Hooters shirt, because Hooters. It was from Glitch Gear. Again, link will be in the description. But I really like this shirt. And there's something else I was going to say about that, but I don't remember. But another little trinket that I got at TooManyGames was this retro GameCon magnet. It's just Legend of Zelda on a CRT. But what happens at a lot of conventions is that other conventions will go and advertise. So at TooManyGames, Retro GameCon was there, as well as Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. So I was wearing my Retro GameCon shirt, which is the one in Syracuse, and the guy saw me and he's like, oh, Retro GameCon, here, have this magnet because you support us. I was like, all right, free magnet. So that was cool. Retro GameCon's a good convention. It's usually in October. Like I said, in Syracuse. I'll probably be there again this year. Again, before getting to the video games, some other little things. Bought a bunch of cards, which was a rabbit hole I wish I didn't go down, but these things happen. But I went back and bought some like old Yu-Gi-Oh cards that I didn't have growing up necessarily, but just some cool things you'll see. I'm very basic. I love Dark Magician. I love Blue Eyes White Dragon. So I bought a couple of different Dark Magicians and Blue Eyes White Dragons. This first one is from 1998. It's by Bandai. So prior to the official TCG, Bandai got a license to make Yu-Gi-Oh merchandise, and one of the things they made was a card game. So it's a precursor to the official card game, the OCG and the TCG. But it came out in 3 sets. There was first generation, second generation, third generation, among some other things. It had super basic rules that were very reminiscent of the TCG, but it was still really cool to get a piece of like pre-TCG era memorabilia. Another one I got is Dark Magician's, one of his first few appearances in Japanese. This one is from Structure Deck Yu-Gi in 2001. So there was a bunch of structure decks, right in the beginning that were really neat. But this is one of them. I don't love this artwork. The Bandai one I bought because it's a weird piece of history, but I don't love this artwork, but I do love this one. So this is from the Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon set in Japan. It's a little different from the Legend of Blue Eyes set we got here in North America. So if you've noticed on some of these cards is that the attack and defense are in a different place from how we got them here in North America, where they are at the bottom. It's a different layout. So this is specifically the Series 1 and 2 layout, where the attack and defense were on the side. So part of that is really cool because at some point in the past I've talked about Eternal Duel of Soul. All of those cards appear like this. Obviously, we didn't get that in North America, so it's still really cool. But this is the artwork I love. The Legend of Blue Eyes set in Japan was a reprint set of Starter Box and Volume 1, 2 sets that were released in the OCG, just using the Series 2 layout, so that was cool. The Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon set we got here in North America is a combination of that Legend of Blue Eyes set as well as Phantom God, another OCG set. 2 more Dark Magicians I got. This one is just a 15th anniversary Dark Magician. It's got like secret rare art, and it's just really cool. Like I said, it's in the artwork I like, so that's awesome. But probably the coolest Dark Magician I got was this one. So this one's graded by, I think it was World Class Grading. This one is from Starter Deck Yu-Gi, which it's one of the first 2 starter decks, the other one being Starter Deck Kaiba, both released in the early 2000s here in North America. This slab is really, really messed up, but if it was a perfect 10 like World Class Grading says it is, this is a pretty expensive card. It's pretty neat. I specifically remember getting the Duel Masters Guide in 2003, which had Starter Deck Yu-Gi, Starter Deck Kaiba, and a DVD as to how to play the game. So, little Max was super obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! Just as he was Pokemon growing up. So I remember getting that for like Christmas or for a birthday and learning to play Yu-Gi-Oh! That way. The DVD, the decks are very hard to come by now, and that set alone would be super expensive. But at some point I want to get the DVD just to like reminisce and hear them talking about how to play the game. I think it also featured the voice actors of Yugi and Kaiba, which is really, really neat. So maybe I'll get that soon. Another Dark Magician, but not Dark Magician, it's Dark Magician Girl. Her first appearance was in Premium Pack 4, which was a promotional set at events in December of 2000, which was later released to the public in January 2001. But this artwork is really neat because it's a little different from the artwork we got in North America. First thing that's interesting is that she has a hexagram as like a crest of her shirt. That was removed in North America because of what could have been like religious connotation. And also her cleavage is a lot more here than it is in North America. So it's definitely interesting to see different changes of how Konami would have thought North American audiences would take to certain artworks. The last 2 cards are Blue Eyes cards. So the first one is, like I said, I'm super basic, and Blue Eyes is awesome. And this original Blue Eyes artwork is far and away my favorite artwork on a Yu-Gi-Oh card ever. So that's part of why I love it. When I bought this, the listing said it was in Japanese, while I was researching for this video, I found out that this is a Chinese card, which happens, it's fine. It's out of Structure Deck Kaiba, which that's why I bought it, because I thought it was, an original release, and it is. I just thought it was in Japanese and not in Chinese, so clearly I don't know the difference in those writings, but I do actually kind of notice the difference between this and some of the other Japanese cards I got. But still really cool. I love this artwork. That's neat. And last commercially released card was this Blue Eyes White Dragon out of Legendary Collection. This one's graded by Beckett. WCG and Beckett are not PSA, and I kind of overpaid for this one, but it was still really neat. This is out of Legendary Collection, which was this huge binder that had a bunch of promo cards and a bunch of old sets. And I remember having that Legendary Collection binder growing up. And so I saw this, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I realized how much I overpaid, even though this is a perfect 10. So it just kind of happens, but still neat to add to the collection. Now, I say commercially released cards because those weren't the only cards that I got. So at TooManyGames, there was an artist there that goes by Phoenix Animation. And he had a bunch of different anime prints on posters and like metallic posters. And he had these, and I immediately fell in love. So these are all different Yu-Gi-Oh cards that have that are anime artworks that I just said I had to get them because it's the way they were presented in the anime, and that's what I remember watching growing up. And I kind of stand by that I wouldn't have bought those cards had I seen these first, but they're awesome. I got 21 of them. And so just to quickly go through some of them, there is Blue Eyes White Dragon. Again, best artwork. It looks so cool. This is out of the first episode of the anime. There's Blue Eyes Ultimate. There's Dark Magician Girl. There's the 3 Egyptian gods, Obelisk, Slifer, and Ra. There's Exodia, all 5 pieces of Exodia. There is Flame Swordsman, which was one of Joey's signature monsters. There's Harpy Lady, which was my Valentine's signature monster. Pot of Greed. Pot of Greed's just really funny. That's a smile only a mother could love. But me and a friend have a joke about Pot of Greed. It's just Pot of Greed. There is Relinquished, which was one of Maximilian Pegasus's signature cards. There's the Seal of Orichalcos from later in the anime. I believe it was after the Battle City arc. There are the 3 soul cards. So in the anime, Pegasus steals souls for some of the characters, specifically Grandpa, Mokuba, and Kaiba. So it was really cool to get those. Had I bought only 3, I definitely would have bought the souls cards. And the last one is Toon World, another one of Pegasus's signature cards. So those were the cards that I bought. Just some prints. I don't normally get art because I'm not really into art. I don't have a lot of art in my room. I just kind of have stuff to fill up the walls. But I saw these, and I wanted to get all of them. So the first one is this Celebi canvas, which the contrast with the pink and the green of Celebi is beautiful. I absolutely love this. It was not nearly as expensive as I was expecting it to be, and I just love it. It looks so beautiful. So that's just fantastic. Like I said, all the artists will be credited in the description. So if you see something you're super interested in, reach out to them. These next 2 were from the same artist. The first one is this Pocket Monsters red, green, and blue print. It's obviously very inspired by the original Game Boy releases, and that's why I love them. I like the Pocket Monsters. I like the artwork. I like the red, green, and blue. So that's just very, very pretty. The next one, again by the same artist, is this The End poster. Obviously referencing the last episode of the anime where Ash is present, and it's just very pretty. Both of these prints are absolutely gorgeous. So those are terrific. The last print, I don't know if to call it a print or a poster, but one of my favorite Pokemon movies is Pokemon 2000. I remember watching this movie and my dad having the DVD and going to his house and watching it. So between the first Pokemon movie with Mewtwo, Pokemon 2000 with Lugia and the Legendary Birds, and Pokemon Forever with Celebi on that canvas print, I absolutely love those movies. So this print was perfect. Had this seller had prints for the other 2 movies, I definitely would have bought them. I'm not really familiar with the other Pokemon movies, but I digress. So the last few things of non-actual video games, I did buy some board games. I haven't had a chance to try all of them, but we'll go from there. The first one was Banana, which is a 2016 anime revolving around cats that live in bananas. So this game is a card effect game from 2022 where your goal is to collect 10 different bananas. So that's adorable. It's really funny. It's just kind of cool. The next one, this character is going to appear again in this video, but it's a Gudetama, the Tricky Egg card game. So Gudetama started in 2013. It's kind of like a promo character. It translates to lazy egg, which that's what it looks like. And it's by the same people who made Hello Kitty. He's kind of just like a promo character. He's got a TV series, got an anime, bunch of different little things. My first experience with Gudetama was my mom came home with these little toys that when you squish them, slime would come out. And if you squeezed it again, that slime would go back in. It looked really silly, and I didn't realize what it was. It was a Gudetama toy, and I realized, oh, it's like the same as what I'm buying here. What you'll see later is more of my connection. But I also know there is a Gudetama, I feel like stop motion or claymation series on Netflix that is subtitled in English. So if this seems silly to you, by all means, go for it. Another board game is Ramen Ramen. Ramen Ramen came out in 2021, where your goal is to make ramen that have different point values, but you have to be careful because the other players can steal that ramen. So it's just kind of cool. This artwork is very silly, so if I ever want to make ramen with friends, now I can. Also, forgot to mention this Gudetama game. If anybody has ever played Cucumber, it's supposed to be like the game Cucumber, which involves taking tricks and having the least amount of points. I don't know what that means, but at some point I will. The last game, which I have tried, is called Honk. It's about collecting geese. If you've ever played Splendor, it's a lot like Splendor, where each goose has different ingredients that you can get to feed it. And once you feed it, you get different points based on certain scenarios. The artwork for the geese is so silly. That's like what one of the geese looks like. So I strongly recommend playing this game if you are at all interested in geese. Okay, the last non-game thing before we actually get to the games is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Didn't get it at TooManyGames. Didn't get it on eBay. Just, the movie was fantastic. My friends and I saw it. The night it came out, we saw its cool late-night release. And I really can't say enough about this movie. It is fantastic. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go out of your way to see it, because it is so, so good. So that's a great connection to the video games, ending with the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So we're going to go backwards in time, as always. We're going to start with the newest system and work our way back. Things are falling on my desk. So we're going to start with the Switch. I always talk about whether or not a system is region locked or not, and the Switch is not region locked, so you can play any Switch game anywhere you want on any system. And one thing I'll mention is that in my main review, I wrongly mentioned that I had every special edition Pokemon system, and that's a lie. I completely forgot about the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee edition Switch, which I don't have, so that's the next one on the list, but just wanted to give that correction. So, moving to the games, the first one is Ape Out. If you know me, you know that I love monkeys, so Ape Out's right up my alley. This is a 2019 beat 'em up by Devolver. You play as an ape who is trying to kill humans who sometimes wield guns. Two big sellers of this game. One of them is the actual goal of the game is to escape levels where humans are trying to kill you. But each level is randomized every time, so there's not a really good way to memorize what goes on. So that's super awesome. And also the music is a big part of this game. So it's a jazz soundtrack, but it adapts to your gameplay. So I don't really know how that works, but it's really freaking cool. So that's Ape Out. It was released physically by Special Reserve Games through Limited Run, so that's neat. Next is Cuphead. If you've ever seen gameplay of Cuphead, you already know why I bought this. The artwork is super reminiscent of like old school cartoons, so it looks beautiful. If you look up gameplay, I guarantee you'll fall in love right away. It's a 2017 run and gun run and gun, developed and published by Studio MDHR. It originally started on Microsoft, specifically on the Xbox One in 2017, and eventually came to Switch in 2019. But this physical release, I believe, only came out in like October, so fairly recent. This also contains the DLC, the Delicious Last Course. So that's also super neat too. This is still available on places like GameStop, but I saw it in front of me and had to go for it. It's specifically a running gun, but it has different elements of like RPGs and shoot 'em ups too. So that's definitely cool. I was talking to a friend about it, and she goes, "It is so hard. Like, couldn't get past second boss hard, but we'll get there when we get there." Next game, say what you will, but this is Galgun Double Piece. So Galgun Double Piece is a 2016 rail shooter published by Alchemist, and it has, quote unquote, pretty girls, where you play as a boy who shoots females with pheromones in an attempt to find true love, which is very silly. Some of the special editions for these games are super risque. The game itself is super risque, but like special editions, if you ever look at some of them, are definitely out there. So some other games that came out in the series are Galgun, the original on Xbox 360 in 2011. That game was re-released as Galgun Returns on the Switch in 2021. There was Galgun VR on Steam in 2017, and also Galgun 2 on Switch in 2018. So I have all three Switch releases of the Galgun game. So that's pretty cool. The next one, so a couple of the games that are here today come from Video Games New York, which is, believe it or not, a video game store in New York. But they get a ton of like import games, a ton of different releases, different like they also publish their own games too. So a lot of stuff that was at their booth at TooManyGames is stuff I won't see anywhere else, or if I do want it, I'm either going to pay an arm and a leg for it just in shipping. So I definitely took advantage of trying to get them when I saw them. So this first one from them is Gorst, Gorsd, the Dominus edition. So when I bought it, I thought that was a horse. And with a title named Gorst, I was like, oh, this is like a weird kind of horse. Also, when I initially read this title, I thought it was just Gorss, Gorss. I am very wrong. There is so little information about this game. I found that it was developed and published by Spring Loaded, but all I was able to find about it is that it's a 2020 arena combat game with like 8-bit-ish style graphics. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, but it's kind of funny. The next game is Mighty Fight Federation, and I have a couple games from this physical publisher. This is Premium Edition Games. So Premium Edition Games is a lot like limited run games where they just release games physically. They have numbered releases, but they are fewer and far between, if you will. So this isn't the first Premium Edition game that's going to be in this video, but it is one of them. This one is their 6th release. I don't know exactly which number they're on, but so it's earlier. I think we are somewhere in the 10s. I gotta double check, but I have a few of their games. They're super nice guys. Their booth at TooManyGames, they talk a lot, so it was really nice to chat with them and talk about some of the games. Mighty Fight Federation is a 2021 3D arena fighter that is beautiful, like really gorgeous. It's kind of has like crossover characters to an extent. There's ToeJam and Earl from the early Sega systems. There's Yooka-Laylee, which is a series that I believe was made by like former Donkey Kong Country developers, so it's got different elements of that. And like I said, it looks very pretty, so it's very cool. Yeah, it's Premium Edition. I'm probably going to start simping and just buying all their stuff, but nonetheless, still very cool. The next one is Okami HD. So I saw this last year at TooManyGames at the same booth. I was hoping at some point we would get a physical edition of this game, and we didn't, so I just ended up buying it anyway. But Okami is a 2006 action-adventure game that has like different other gameplay styles too. It was published by Capcom and released on the PS2. And it eventually had a Wii port in 2008, eventually had a PS3 port in 2012, and then came to Switch in 2021, as well as other modern systems. I can't remember if there was a physical release for the PS4, but there is another Okami HD somewhere. like I said, I was hoping we would get a physical release here in North America for Switch. We didn't, so I ended up buying the Japanese one. But I can't say enough about Okami. It is some of the prettiest artwork I have ever seen in my entire life. So if you don't believe me, go look it up. The intro to the game is really, really long, so that's a small detractor. But the gameplay otherwise is you're playing as this wolf named Amaterasu, and like I said, a bunch of different gameplay styles. But it's really gorgeous. It's stunning. So strongly recommend checking this game out, even if you get the original release. The next game is Pretty Girls Game Collection. So that title seems kind of unassuming. It's a 2022 puzzle collection by East Asia Soft, developed and published by East Asia Soft. And I didn't think it was going to be all that crazy until I went to go do some research. The website says, popular lewd puzzle series gets physical for first time with Pretty Girls Game Collection. And somewhere else in that article, it called this game fan service fueled. Say what you will, there are two other games, Pretty Girls Game Collection 2 and Pretty Girls Game Collection 3. The next two are premium edition games as well. The first one is Rack and Ruin. So this is an action RPG from 2020. It's got some bullet hell elements as well. It was published by Secret Item Games and published physically by Premium Edition Games. This is their number 10 release. And you play as an evil wizard named Rack, and you are destroying everything in your path. So that's neat. Also looks very pretty. The last one from Premium Edition Games is a robot named Fight. This is one of their earlier releases. This is number 4. And I was looking for this game for a while because when I met Premium Edition Games last year at TooManyGames, they talked about it, but they didn't have any copies left. So interestingly, this was at Video Games New York. So I saw it and had to pick it up. It's a Metroidvania from 2017. It was developed and published by Morningstar Game Studio. And the entire premise is that every level is procedurally generated, which is really cool for Metroidvania. So glad to finally come across this. The next one is Snow Bros. Nick and Tom Special. So Snow Bros. Is a 1990 platformer arcade game. It's kind of like Bubble Bobble, if anybody's ever seen Bubble Bobble. It was developed and published by Toaplin. You play as snowman brothers named Nick and Tom, and your goal is to save princesses. So the NES port is super expensive, and this is a modernized revival just from 2022 by Clear River Games. Now, it looks adorable. The gameplay is a lot of fun, and it's nice to get this like nicely ported to Switch, but its meaning extends a little further than that. So the Intellivision Amico is, to save talking about it, is a failed experiment. The Intellivision Amico was supposed to be a game system that hasn't come out yet. It's kept getting delayed and finally, hopefully, has died. But a lot of people lost a lot of money trying to crowdfund for the system. But two people that were at one point or another heads of this project were Nick, the current CEO. I can't remember his name, but his first name is Nick, and Tommy Tallarico, or Tom. So Pat the NES Punk on his podcast, the Completely Unnecessary podcast, they talked a lot about it. So everything I know about the Intellivision Amico comes from the podcast. And Pat the NES Punk did a Christmas special where talking about Snow Bros, because it's a snow game, so it's about around Christmas time. But he was also tying in Amico stuff about it, and he realized that the characters Nick and Tom are the same first names as the Amico heads, if you will. So at one point in the video, he goes Nick and Tom and Nick, just really funny. So that meaning included, I had to get it. On my Instagram, the collecting Instagram, I posted a picture of me with Pat the NES Punk holding it, which is really cool. The next one is Spider Soars. So this is a limited run games release, number 172 for Switch. It was in a limited run direct, I think about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it's an action adventure game, kind of like a platformer, developed and published by WayForward, where you beat up dinosaur spiders. So that's really neat. And it's only from like a year ago. No, so it had to be a year ago. But I saw it in the presentation, had to get it, and it finally came in this month. It looks very, very pretty. So at some point, I definitely want to give this a shot. The next one is Spinch, which I can't say a lot about it because I don't know a lot about it. It's a platformer from 2020 developed by Queen Bee Games, where you venture into a psychedelic world. And that's about as far as I was able to figure out about it. One thing I did notice is that it is super colorful. So I think it was, someplace it was compared to like an LSD trip, but it's really colorful. You play in some psychedelic land. So if that sounds appealing to you, by all means, go for it. The next one is Super Retro Platformer Collection. It's a collection from this year published by Leoful, and it contains a couple old school looking titles. The first is Commander Keen and Keen Dreams, MacBat 64, Regina and Mac, and Tori 3D. I think I've heard of MacBat 64, and I know I've heard of Tori 3D. I believe somebody on Nintendo Life talked about it at one point, but I don't know the other two games at all. But it was not that expensive. It seemed super neat. So, hey, 4 games in one. What a deal. The next two came from Video Games New York. I'll let you say what you will. I had to put in my age when I was going to do some research, trying to learn about these games. So I'll just go into them. The first one is Waifu Uncovered. It's a 2020 shoot 'em up, published by East Asia Soft, where you have to, quote unquote, undress your targets to save them from lethal infection. And somewhere else in that article it mentions a one-finger mode. But that's not where it stops. It stops at Waifu Discovered 2, Medieval Fantasy, which is essentially the same thing from 2021. And somewhere in that article it says, quote unquote, select your desired level of censorship. The last Switch game is one I kind of accidentally bought. It is Waku Waku Sweets. So I bought it because it looked neat, and when I was talking to the guy from Video Games New York, he said it's a Cookie Mama clone. So it's from 2018. It's published by Axis. And I bought it because I thought it looks neat, and I didn't realize that this was released in North America. Not only is this not a Japanese copy, it's a Taiwanese copy based on this age rating, but I could have gotten it in English. So that was kind of a silly mistake, but it still looks really neat, and I'm glad I have it. So that's it for the Switch. Moving farther back, the next newest system is the Xbox One. Xbox One is not region locked for games, but it is region locked for DVDs. It is Handball 16. So if you've seen a video in the past, or if you've seen my post in the past, handball is an unloved sport in here in North America, even though it is so cool. So when I found out that there was an entire EA Sports series based on handball, I was like, well, now I got to collect all of them. I don't really collect for Microsoft systems. This is only the third Microsoft game I have for any Xbox system, but it's super neat. And like I said, my goal is to get all of them, so I'm glad I have this one. I have them mostly on the PlayStation systems like PS3 and PS4. I'll come back to that in just a second. But yeah, I wish we got handball games here in North America. Going back to Gudetama, though, on the 3DS, there are 2 Gudetama games, the only 2 Gudetama games for consoles. So the 3DS is region locked, so I can't play these in a North American 3DS. I don't have a 3DS period, so that's kind of a different issue. But on the left, this is Gudetama Hanjuku de Tanumua, which roughly translates to Soft Boiled Please. And it's released in 2015 by Rocket Company. This one on the right is Gudetama Okawari Ikagasuka, which roughly translates to How Do You Like It? This was released in 2016 by Imagineer, and trying to do research for these games, all I found is that they were action games. I know nothing else about them, but Gudetama, it's a cute little series, so now I have both games. Going back to handball very briefly, though, PS3, not region locked. Not that I have a PS3, but this is Handball 16. So you might notice, why does this look different from this Handball 16? So what's really interesting in European regions is that because there's so many different languages spoken in Europe, sometimes the same game will be released with different cover arts, with different default languages. So that Xbox One version is just a general European release. It's in English, whereas this one is in German. This is a German handball player. I didn't get his name. I probably should have done that. But it's the same game, obviously on different systems, but it's cool to see that it had different versions just based on the language and what country it was going out in. Baseball kind of does this too. I don't know how frequent it is now, but I know earlier in like MLB The Show's lifetime, the games coming out in different countries would have different cover athletes. So that's just something kind of interesting too. Also, like I said, PS3 is not region locked, but one interesting thing I saw was that Sony actually encouraged that developers don't make games region locked, which is kind of interesting. Going back further is the DS. So DS system I grew up with, absolutely adore. And these first three systems are all Japanese systems. DS is not region locked, so I can play any game on any system. But I was bidding on broken DSs from Japan, and I won 3 in one night. So for the cost of $30, I got 3 DSs that all mostly work. So the first one is this Black DS, just a base model that did come out in North America. Seller said it doesn't work. It works perfectly fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this one. So that's kind of interesting that alone the $30 I paid for the DSs, this paid for itself. The next one is one that is broken. It's a Nintendogs Promo DS, or Special Edition DS, I should say. Nintendogs, if you've seen it, it's just a pet simulator. But they got their own DS with this cute little paw. This one's broken because the bottom screen, the touch screen, is cracked. So if I replace the screen, however difficult that may be, I would be able to use it. But it's still cool to get a Special Edition DS that works mostly otherwise. So if nothing else, it's a Game Boy Advance. But that's neat. It's got a little bit of yellowing, but it's still cool to get a Special Edition DS, if nothing else. The last one is not a DS, it's a DSi. One difference between the DS and DSi, besides the fact that this is just an upgraded model, is that the DS Lite, you can change the language on it. So even though they are Japanese DSs, I was able to change their language to English. So if you don't look at the back of the system, you have no idea that it's not an English DS. DSi, though, can't change the language. So this one is stuck in Japanese. But this lime green did not come out in North America, so that's really neat in and of itself. The seller said the shoulders don't work. They work perfectly fine. So that's definitely really interesting. It's missing a stylus. It's got a little bit of yellowing, but nonetheless, still very cool. Going to games, though, got a ton of DS games between TooManyGames and eBay. So the first one is Kiku Kaku Kotoba o Fuyasu, which translates to listen, write, increase your words, first time English arrival. So I believe it is an English training game. It's released in 2007 and published by Benes. It just looks adorable, so that's why I bought it. But it's just kind of funny that now I can learn English. Next is Mame Goma 2, Uchi no Koga Ichiban. Mame means bean in Japanese. Goma is short for spotted seal in Japanese, so it's kind of like small seal. And the subtitle is My Child is the Best. So Small Seal, My Child is the Best is just a really funny game title. I was talking to the person from Foxy Pixel Imports, where I bought this from, and she said it's your goal is to raise a baby seal. So kind of like Gudetama, Mame Goma is just kind of a media series. Not really media series. They started as toys. They got 4 DS games, which is kind of cool. This is just one of the 4. At some point I'll get the others. But you can find it in other media like calendars, for example. So if you wanted a little seal calendar, it's somewhere out there. This specific game was also released in 2008 and published by Creative Core. The next game, not Japanese, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it. I talked about it last time, but this is The New Adventures of Moomin, the Great Autumn Party. So I had a friend when I was growing up who has a Finnish background, and she watched Moomin growing up. So she told me about it, and I learned a little bit about it, and kind of as a way to always have a little piece of her, in the back of my mind, I wanted to collect the Moomin games. So I got one of them in May, and I had that in my main review. It was a Japanese exclusive Moomin DS game. This one is one of the 2 PAL DS games that was released. I can't remember the name of the other one, but now I got one of them. Moomin in general is a Finnish media series where it started, I believe, as books and then became a TV show. So the friend that I had, she watched it growing up. So that was cool. This game is from 2007, and your goal is to organize an autumn festival. So you go around Moomin Valley and just do different tasks for people to get ready for the party. So this release is specifically from Finland, but kind of talking about European releases again, excuse me. There was a Finnish and Swedish release of this game. This one's the Finnish release. It even says in Finnish, "We speak Finnish," in the corner. So this is definitely really cool. The next one is Okari Chibi Robo Happy Richie Osuji, which translates to "Welcome home, Chibi Robo. Happy Rich Big Sweep." Your goal in this game is to help the character from the original GameCube Chibi Robo game. She has since grown up and now has her own family, so you're helping around the house. And that way, there are 5 games in the Chibi Robo series, all published by Nintendo. This one is the 3rd game in the series, but it's Japan exclusive, released in 2009. Chibi Robo in general has been totally mismanaged by Nintendo. The original GameCube release did not have publication. So it didn't sell well at all, and the original GameCube game is really expensive here in North America. But like there was another, I think it was either another DS game or a 3DS game where it was only released through Walmart in North America. So who was going to go to Walmart specifically to buy a Chibi Robo game that nobody's ever heard of? So along the way, Nintendo has not done a good job with Chibi Robo, but it's very cute. It's very funny. Now I have the DS game. The next one, talking about Okami a little bit again. This is Okami Den, Chisaki Taiyu, which that subtitle roughly translates to Local Sun. This is a spiritual successor in 2010 to the original Okami game, published by Capcom on the DS. The North American game is really expensive, but this one was very fairly priced, so I had to pick it up because it looks super neat, and it's Okami. The next one is Pokemon Ranger Hikari no Kiseki, which is better known as Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs. So this is the last entry in the Pokemon Ranger series. I now have all 3 Pokemon Ranger games in Japanese, even though I've never played Pokemon Ranger. It's an action-adventure spin-off series to the mainline Pokemon games, and this specific game is to investigate Pokemon pinchers in the Oblivia region. So it's Pokemon, that's why I got it, but definitely neat nonetheless to at least have all 3 in Japanese. The next one is Puyo 15th Anniversary. So this was released in 2006. Puyo is a puzzle series published by Sega. So we didn't get this game specifically, but we did get other Puyo games. I think the first one was some Puyo game on like the Neo Geo Pocket Color in the 90s. If you've never heard of that system, I don't blame you. But it was very obscure. But it did get 2 releases on Switch, Puyo Tetris 1 and 2 in North America. So if this seems interesting to you, you've probably seen gameplay like it, adjacent to it. But if it sounds intriguing to you, definitely check out the 2 Switch games. This game had a bunch of different game modes for the 15th anniversary. It was also released on PSP, PS2, and Wii, all in Japan. But it's also interesting because it was the first Puyo game to be released on the Wii in Japan. So, pretty cool. The last DS game is Star Fox Command. Star Fox, we're going to talk a little bit more later. But this is a 2006 action-adventure game in the Star Fox series. It's the only DS game for the Star Fox series. It's published by Nintendo. And your goal is to defend the galaxy from the Anglar. So Star Fox in general has a special place in my heart because my brother and I grew up playing Star Fox Adventures and Star Fox Assault on the GameCube along with Melee. But so now every time I see Star Fox anything, I kind of feel like I have to get it. So this is really cool to get the DS game, even though I didn't play the North American one. Moving farther back is the GameCube. GameCube is region locked, but conveniently, I have 3 Japanese GameCubes. Don't ask me why, but this is Sonic Mega Collection. This was released in 2002, published by Sega. So if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the first few Sega games released on Nintendo systems. By this time, Sega had discontinued making home consoles. The Dreamcast did not go too well for Sega. So this game came out on the GameCube. It would eventually be released on the PS2 and Xbox as Sonic Mega Collection Plus, that included all the titles I'm about to say, plus some Sega Game Gear titles, which is really neat. This comes packed in with Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, and 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic Spinball, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, but you can also unlock different things like the Blue Sphere minigame, Knuckles and Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and other Sega games like Flicky, Rice Star, The Ooze, and Comic Zone. So, very cool. Moving farther back is the Game Boy Advance. Game Boy Advance is not region locked. You can play any Game Boy game on any Game Boy system, to an extent. So the first one is Shrek 2, one of the few North American games I have in this video. And you would think this is not a big deal. It's not all that exciting. But the coolest thing about this game specifically is because at Retro Game Con Junior, I met an artist who I previously met at TooManyGames last year. Her artwork is under the name East of Haven, so I'll definitely link her in the description. But I saw her at Retro Game Con Junior. I bought a bag from her to give to somebody else, and she saw in my Retro Game Con Junior Insta post that I got a copy of Shrek, just the DVD. Who doesn't love Shrek? And she goes, "Are you the one that collects Shrek stuff?" I go, "Yeah." And she said, "Okay, I have something for you. See me at TooManyGames. I'll give it to you." So I went up to her table. She was conveniently with Pat the NES Punk. And she's like, "This is for you." So it's a almost brand new copy of Shrek 2, which is really funny. One really cool thing is I can tell it's never been touched before because it has this Baskin-Robbins coupon that expired in 2004. So this game was released in 2004. It's just a side-scroller by Activision that had other releases on the Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube. But having this with like the coupon is like really silly, really funny. But also, it's nice to have a little story, having somebody gift it to me, which is just awesome. So, love that. But it's Shrek. Also on Game Boy Advance, a couple more things. The first one is Mawaru, made in Wario. So this is WarioWare Twisted here in North America, which is really expensive. This was not nearly as expensive. So WarioWare is a minigame series. I played WarioWare Smooth Moves on the Wii when we first got a Wii almost 20 years ago. That pains me to say. But it was published by Nintendo. WarioWare in general is just a bunch of minigames, usually sometimes in a party style. But you might be wondering why this cartridge looks so freaking big. So there's a gyro sensor inside the cartridge. And what that gyro sensor does is it picks up motion in the real world. So, for example, there's a minigame in WarioWare Twisted where you are wiping a windshield. So when this game is plugged in and you hold your Game Boy upright, when you go like this, it mimics washing a windshield, which is really, really cool. It's also one of the two games that has vibration for the Game Boy Advance, the other one being Drill Dozer. So it was really, really cool to see Nintendo try new things, especially as early as the Game Boy Advance. So that's really neat. Next 5 games are just combination of games. Pokemon games on the Game Boy Advance are very expensive here in North America, but in Japanese, they are not nearly as expensive. The cost for all 5 Game Boy Advance releases for Pokemon is about the cost for just Fire Red and Leaf Green here in North America. So that's kind of says a lot. I played Fire Red growing up. It was my first Pokemon game, so this will always hold a special place in my heart. There's also Leaf Green, its counterpart. Both of those were released in 2004. The original Pokemon games on GBA were Ruby and Sapphire. These were both released in 2002, and if I'm not mistaken, they are the best-selling games on the Game Boy Advance. So that says a lot. Now, Ruby and Sapphire's updated version is Pokemon Emerald. This was also released in 2004, and this is really, really expensive here in North America. So it's it's Pokemon. I wanted to get them at some point because GBA is also one of my errors from growing up. But it's cool to have all 5 original releases on the Game Boy Advance. So, moving farther back, the PlayStation 2 is region locked. I have a Japanese PS2, but what I got is not a system nor a game. It's a memory card. So, if you know from the past, I love the Ape Escape series. Monkeys are really funny in general. Ape Escape 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, and this is just a promotional memory card that came out. I couldn't find a lot of information about this memory card, but it was it was released in Japan. Had to get it as a promo item. They're not rare. They were pretty easy to come by on eBay. But it was also interesting. I wanted to see what was in the memory card, and there's save files of Ape Escape 2 and Ape Escape 3. So I felt that, but that's really neat. Moving a little bit farther back is the Dreamcast. Just like the Xbox, I don't collect Microsoft systems. I don't really collect Microsoft systems, period, minus the 3 games I do have. And I don't really collect Sega systems either. I don't have any Sega systems at all. But I have 2 Genesis games, and now I have a Dreamcast game. The Dreamcast is region locked. Samba de Amigo is a staple for Dreamcast collecting. It's a really expensive game here in North America, but in Japanese it's very, very cheap. So this is a 1999 rhythm game published by Sega. It just has a bunch of popular Latin songs. I believe it was originally bundled with maracas, so you're supposed to play with maraca controllers. So that's really cool. I don't have a Dreamcast, like I said, but this game did come out on Wii in 2008, so that's a way of playing it in North America. We're also getting Samba de Amigo Party Central on the Switch in August. So if playing as a monkey with maracas sounds exciting to you, check out Party Central coming soon. Nintendo and Sega, you're welcome for the advertising. So moving a little bit further back is the Game Boy Color. Like I said, Game Boys are not region locked, but we do have a few here. The first 2 I talked about in main review because I got the sequels to the games, but the original releases are Kaite Denju Telefang, Power Version and Speed Version, which is also the same titles as Kaite Denju Telefang 2 on the Game Boy Advance. Now, at some point in the past, I thought I saw that these games interact with the real world, so certain things you do outside of your Game Boy will affect what happens in the game. I was clearly wrong. But once I heard about them, I wanted to get them. I don't really know why, but now I have all 4 releases, these 2 and the 2 sequels on GBA. These 2 are an RPG pair from 2000 developed by Natsume, where you use a mobile phone from 2000 to summon monsters. I'm going to talk a little bit more about another game in just a second, but I thought they interacted with the real world. So that's just kind of cool to now have all of them. But the game that does actually interact with the real world is Robo Pond. So Robo Pond is a series from the late 1990s that do interact with the real world. So you'll notice that this cartridge is a lot bigger than this other Game Boy Color cartridge. And that's because there is an IR panel at the top where you can interact with, say, home appliances, and that affects what happens in the game. So just a little bit of story behind Robo Pond. The first 2 games were Robo Pond Sun and Star, released on the Game Boy Color in 1998. This is Robo Pond Moon, released in 1999. There's one more Robo Pond game on the Game Boy Color. It is Robo Pond Comic Bomb Bomb. That's the last Robo Pond game I'm missing in the Game Boy Color games. We got only Robo Pond Sun for Game Boy Color in North America, but then they did get sequels, Robo Pond Cross and something else on GBA. Ring and Cross. GBA Robo Pond Ring and Cross versions on GBA that do also react with the real world using the GB Kiss feature. One interesting thing is that Robo Pond kind of sounds like Pokemon. The goal of this game is to collect robot creatures and have them battle, which is almost identical to Robo Pond, to Pokemon. So I think Robo Pond tried to capitalize on that formula back in the day before Pokemon absolutely exploded as a media franchise. So it's an interesting little piece of history that way. This was published by Hudson Soft in Japan and Atlas here in North America. And like I said, I'm almost done collecting for them, so hopefully that happens soon. So the last Game Boy Color game is another Moomin game. This is Moomin'S Tale. It's the first Moomin video game released for consoles. This is an action platformer from 1999 developed by Sunsoft. It is based on the 1990 TV series. And this game was originally released in Japan, then released in Europe, and it was going to have a North American release, at least according to the Moomin Wikipedia. So it was canceled for some reason, but it would have been an interesting turn of history had this game did come to North America, and maybe Moomin would have been at least a little bit bigger than it currently is. So still really cool. So last few games in this video, but moving farther back, we get to the N64. So the first thing is F-Zero X. F-Zero is a racing series that started on the Super Nintendo. This one's from 1998. It's a futuristic racing game published by Nintendo, again from 1998. And it's just a very popular cult series. So we haven't gotten an F-Zero game since the GameCube, which is now about 20 years ago, which says a lot. But I think one of the reasons why Nintendo won't bring back F-Zero is because they don't want it to compete with Mario Kart. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is one of the best, I think it's the best selling Switch game. So, I don't think they want to put out a competitor to Mario Kart. And even so, I think, in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, there are 2 F-Zero tracks. So I don't know if we'll ever get an F-Zero game, but it's still really, really neat. I have the North American release. I thought I had the Japanese one, but then when I went to go check before I bought it, I didn't. So now I do. The other N64 game I got, I talked about Star Fox Command earlier, and this is Lylat Wars. So in main review, I had the Star Fox 64 Rumble Pack release in Japanese for Star Fox 64, and this is the European release. So Star Fox 64 was released in 1997. It's an action-adventure sequel to the original Star Fox game, again published by Nintendo, but this is Lylat Wars. This is not Star Fox 64. Nintendo was too afraid that Star Fox would sound a lot like a German company, Star Vox, which in German pronunciation sounds like Star Fox. So they wanted to avoid that confusion. I tried looking up what that company was, and I couldn't find anything about it. But instead, they changed it to Lylat Wars, since some of the events of the game, happen on like some planet Lylat. Star Fox again is a series I grew up with my brother, but it's still really cool to get its Rumble Pack version and to see like the historical difference with Lylat Wars and not Star Fox. I'm going to come back to PAL releases in just a second, but talking a little bit about region locking for the N64. So the N64 has a physical region lock where you can't put a Japanese game into a North American system because it doesn't actually fit. The tray that takes in the games, you can just change it out and all of a sudden it is region free, but PAL games don't work the same way. So somebody that is watching this video is going to tear me a new one because I don't know all the tech behind it, but essentially PAL games run at a different frequency, a different output frequency. So not all PAL games will show up on North American or Japanese systems, technically because Europe is the PAL region, whereas North America and Japan have NTSC systems. So PAL and NTSC don't really work that way, at least on older systems. I don't know all the tech behind it, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I want to know why, but it's still really neat. It's neat to have the Japanese Rumble Pack Edition. It's cool to have the PAL Rumble Pack Edition. And at some point, I will probably get the North American Rumble Pack Edition. So that's it for N64, but going back one more step to the Super Nintendo, the last 2 video games I bought in the month of June. Again, talking about Star Fox is Star Wing. So Star Fox released on the Super Famicom and on the Super Nintendo, but this is the PAL Super Nintendo Star Fox. Just titled Star Wing. I don't know the exact reason, same way as like, Star Vox to Star Fox, I get that, but I don't know why this also wasn't called Star Fox or why it wasn't called Lylat or anything to that effect, but this is just Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. So I have it on Super Nintendo, I think I have it on Super Famicom, and now I have it in PAL. I have all 3 original Star Foxes. There was a sequel to Star Fox on the Super Nintendo that got canceled, but it did come back as Star Fox 2 on the Super Nintendo Classic within the past couple of years. So that's pretty cool. And last but not least for the games, before I get to definitely the coolest thing I got in the month of June, is Super Chinese World 2. So Super Chinese is a series made by a Japanese company called Culture Brain. So it's interesting that there's a game series called Super Chinese by a Japanese company. I think that's just kind of funny. But this is an action RPG. This is from 1993. This is a sequel to Super Chinese World 1. Super Chinese World came to North America as Super Ninja Boy. And I read on GameFAQs and on a random Super Nintendo blog that we were supposed to get Super Chinese World as Galactic Defender because the artwork of the box that was canceled looks similar. So I don't know if that was actually going to happen, but still an interesting little piece of history that Super Chinese World 2 might have came to North America. The Super Chinese games on the Famicom did come to North America. It just has different names. That's still kind of cool too. So that's it for games. But the coolest thing I got in June is not a game. So at TooManyGames, there was a seller very close to the Retro GameCon table, or right next to the Retro GameCon table, who had this, and he said he put it out on Friday, didn't get any bites at all about it, so he didn't put it out on Saturday. But on Sunday, he made more space in his cases, so he was able to put it out, and I had to ask about it. It's really expensive, but it's really, really cool. So it is this. This is a press kit for the movie Pokemon 2000. You see Warner Bros. Up here. So if you are unfamiliar with what a press kit is just a media package sent to different media companies in an attempt to have them advertise, publish something about the movie. It just gives some information before the thing actually comes out. So this would have been sent to some different magazine company, some other kind of media publisher to talk about the movie. So here's the folder. Everything is on this left-hand pocket. I'm going to try and be really careful with it. But the first packet in here is the production information. It talks... Oh, that's not the right one. Whoopsies. This is the production information. So there's a couple different things in here. It goes into about the production information first is just sort of information about the movie. Why is there a movie? It goes into about the story, which is the story of Pokemon 2000. It goes into detail about that. After about the story, it talks a little bit about the soundtrack, and somewhere in here, let me find it. At the end of the movie, in the credits, there is Pokemon by Weird Al, and the production information in the about the story section refers to Weird Al Yankovic as the incomparable Weird Al Yankovic. So Warner Bros. Has that respect for the greatest of all time. One page is randomly upside down for some reason. That's where the about the phenomenon starts, and goes into detail about how Pokemon is a growing media franchise. It's getting super big, right? Pokemon the movie 2000 is in the Gen 2 era, and it's just crazy because Pokemon came to North America very late, and it was already starting to boom. And at the time of this movie, at the time this press kit came out, I don't think anybody saw it becoming the absolute juggernaut franchise it is. It's the biggest media franchise of all time. So it's interesting to see a little bit about how Pokemon was presented this early on in its life. It was big. It wasn't what it is now. So that's really, really cool. It also goes into about the team that went into, writing and directing the movie. This big old thick packet is the casting credits. So it contains the cast for the North American dub of the movie, as well as the cast and all the people that worked on the original Japanese release, The Power of One, again, which came to North America as Pokemon 2000. So it just goes over everybody that was involved in making the movie, which is really cool. This packet is ridiculously thick. Do these have page numbers? I didn't even think about that. Okay, they don't have page numbers, but there's a lot of people listed in this packet, so that's really cool too. But definitely the neatest part of this press kit is the fact that they were sent with prints of different stills in the movie. So just some different scenes. This one, it's Ash with some of his Pokemon. One interesting thing about this is that it says Bulbasaur as opposed to Bulbasaur, BAL. Basaur, so that's just kind of an interesting error by Warner Bros. There's one with Lugia. There's one with just Ash and Pikachu. There's one with all the Pokemon on the ledge. There's one with the legendary birds. There's one where Team Rocket is actually helping Ash. There's one where Slowking is talking about the prophecy. And the last few prints are from Pikachu's Rescue Adventure, which is an animated short right before the movie actually shows. I think most Pokemon movies have an animated short right before them, so this is just one that came before Pokemon 2000. So there's a bunch of Blossom, Elekid, and Execute, a bunch of different Pokemon. I see Ledeba and some of Ash's Pokemon, and a Hoot. And is there one more? No. So those are all the prints. Really, really cool. I can't begin to say enough how neat having this like piece of Pokemon history. And like I was talking about, not only is, it's a cool piece of Pokemon history, but it's for a movie that I really, really enjoyed, and have a lot of memories with. So to get the press kit, to get the original release information about the movie is kind of sick. So it was pretty expensive. The guy worked out a deal with me, so he was really cool. But I'm very glad to have this Pokemon piece of history with me. So that's everything. This was a lot, I understand. So if you're still here, I appreciate you watching, and hopefully I taught you something. But otherwise, see you next time.